What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Trax Hyatt, and we're here with you tonight on a Wednesday night. Happy Hump Day. We're so excited. We're going to get right into it. First, we're going to talk a little bit around the table about the Bears in training camp and everything that's going on. In a little bit, we'll have a longtime friend of the show, Larry Howley from WGN. Really excited to have him on. He is a diehard Bears fan who's been covering sports media for almost 30 years. So really excited to have him on. He's jumping off the train. He's getting in front of his in his studio for us, and he's going to be rip roaring and ready to go. But right now in the building, we have the Twin Towers here, Kyle and Brandon. How you guys doing tonight, fellas?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
Good, man. I'm so excited. It's been a while since we've worked together. I mean, it feels like sometimes it's like Kyle or Brandon, but I don't think we've done a show for a while together. So the pleasure's all mine, and I can't wait to chop it up because you guys are like walking statistical books. So got a lot of knowledge, a lot of cool stuff, and also you guys, well, Kyle especially, is right at River Street Tavern, one of our best sponsors, and he can always fill us in on all of the events and things that are going on and specials and stuff. So we get like a really cool like behind the scenes look from Kyle, without being too creepy about it. But yeah, guys. So what's going on this week, man? Anything exciting? Anything new?
I mean, I'm just getting ready for the Hall of Fame game next Thursday. I think River Street Tavern will probably be having some sort of little party for Thursday night football for the Bears, but we haven't really discussed the details yet.
Okay. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, same thing, man. Been pretty busy, but I'm still keeping my eyes on, training camp and the Bears in general. I did want to say, man, that intro video, there's a small clip from a drone going through Wrigley Field.
Really?
Have you guys ever seen that full video?
No.
Oh, the guy does like a 15-minute drone fly through the surrounding area of Wrigley Field and then goes in, but he does some watch if you get a chance. I mean, he puts the drone in like the tightest places. I think he even goes in like the dugout and stuff. It's insane. Some of those guys that can fly those things, man. So when you get a chance, watch the full duration of that drone video.
Where do you come up? Like, this is what I'm talking about. This is like this is the behind the, like, who thinks or knows about this stuff? This is great.
It's Cubs.
Like you're a groundskeeper or something from there, and you just like, dude, you pulled stuff out that I didn't even know. Like this, what that. Oh, so that was biased. That was, obviously he's not on the team, but trying to find something that's genuinely exciting. That's pretty exciting when Bias comes and sweeps the plate with his hand and touches. You know what I mean? You got to keep that in the arsenal. But you to pull out, I didn't even know like drones was like a thing for like sports when he was playing with us.
Yeah, some guy did it. They did it for the Cubs website. They posted for their social media. The Cubs posted, and it's like I think it's like an 8 to 15-minute video where he flies around like a few bars around the area, then he goes into Wrigley Field. But you should see what this does with the drone. It's nuts.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out, man. I'll look it up. So just like drone, we'll talk.
Wrigley Field drone video, something like that.
Yeah. So I mean that's basically like some cool news right now because the other things at Wrigley are not that cool right now. So, I think Kyle is we'll save it for the end of the show, and then that's when it'll be the end of the show because there's really not much to talk about in Cubs camp unless you guys got something that I don't know about, but I don't really know a whole lot. But we're just gonna focus on the positive and eliminate the negative right now and talk about the Bears and our beloved Caleb and all that kind of stuff. You guys are okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I've been really excited, and obviously you guys saw the thumbnail that I created for us, about could this be the most exciting training camp that we've ever had? Now that's on what do you call it? Like on record, right? Because back in the day, obviously when 85 Bears, we didn't get all the camera angles and everything that we're getting right now. So there had to have been some really cool stuff with those characters, right? I mean, they would, I don't even know if like HBO Hard Knocks would be able to film that craziness. But as of right now, year to date, I'm really excited about what's going on. You got 2 first-round draft picks. We finally look like we have a competent QB at the helm. That guys are talking about, Swift and whatnot. Some information just a few days ago came out that we actually threw some hard, serious dough at Jaquan and drove the price up for, Philly. And you guys know how much I felt about Jaquan and his presence and just him being, a beastly guy like the Brandon Jacobs or, somebody like that, Christian Okoye or whatever. But I'm like, this is really cool, man. And I just kind of want to just go around the table with you guys, Kyle, and then Brandon, exactly what you guys are feeling right now. If this is at least close to being one of the most anticipated and exciting training camps that is known right now in the history books.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the most important training camp of my lifetime for sure. Like you said, there's probably some pretty good antics back in '85. And then, obviously the years 2004, 2005, 2006, when the Bears really had a pretty good defense and actually overall pretty good team. But, those teams always kind of had an asterisk around them. We knew the Bears offense in '06 wasn't going to be some dominant offense in the NFL. We knew the team was going to have to win by their defense. And then when they got to the Super Bowl, they got matched up against Peyton Manning. I think most people kind of thought, man, this is just an uphill battle game after game. But ultimately, 2024-25 season is the most excited I've been as a Chicago Bears fan in my entire life. I don't think the Bears have ever had an offense like this as far back as I can remember. You got Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, both perennial #1 receivers in the NFL. Rome Odunze, who's probably being groomed to be #1 receiver in the NFL. Like you said, DeAndre Swift, one of the best weapons out of the backfield in the NFL. And then obviously you have a bunch of young guys coming into their own, guys like Gervon Dexter, Roschon Johnson, Tyler Scott. And then lastly, the thing everybody's been talking about for the last 2 months, Hard Knocks. I mean, everybody loves Hard Knocks. It's going to be cool to get to see what's happening inside the locker room, inside the offices, inside these meetings with the Chicago Bears. And I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, there's so much that you just had right there to unpack, a lot. And it's like, I mean, last year, okay, Justin, DJ, little this, little that, right? But there's so much that you just unpacked right there, right? It just it's unbelievable that we're used to having a few like really cool toys or semi-cool toys with the Chicago Bears or any of our sports. But right now, Chicago Bears. And I'm like, this is just, guys, pinch me. Or am I dreaming right now, Brandon? I mean, what do you think? Do you agree with your brother right now? Is this quite possibly one of the most, if not most exciting training camps that you've experienced in your life?
Yeah, I would absolutely say it is. Not just because of, Caleb Williams, because obviously that's going to be the big draw, but the Bears are finally getting national attention. I think that's the biggest difference I've seen from, I'm a diehard Bears fan. All three of us are. We live and breathe Bears. We're excited when we read anything like a possible free agent signing. But the entire NFL nation is excited for this Bears team. Like Kyle said, like you said, that's why they got the Hard Knocks. Everybody's going to want to watch that because the Bears are on there. You see the national attention. Nick Wright said yesterday, I believe, that he thinks the Bears possibly win the Super Bowl. Chad Johnson made the video about the weapons Caleb Williams is going to have. So you're going to a lot of people are going to want to be inside that training camp, and that's why the NFL chose Wright. They chose the Bears. I'm excited. They got a lot of grief for that. It felt like a lot of Bears fans were upset about the Hard Knocks thing, but how could you not want to be closer to this? You know what I mean?
Well, and it gives you a little bit of insight, and they're going to do a little bit more and try harder and spice things up and really make it count and stuff. And we saw the tumble of Scott, great Scott's, he he got mad at himself because he didn't stay on his feet, but still caught the ball. That was cool, right? I mean, there's so much cool stuff going on right now. And then you got the the Air Jordan throw with Caleb, and all this kind of stuff. And I was talking to Kellen Davis yesterday, and I was like, we were talking about the Hall of Fame game. Between us, I was talking to him about Hester and seeing if he could do a promo video for Mongo Bash, Mongo Ball, and he said absolutely he'd reach out. So we're just waiting to hear back from that. But Kellen jumped right on that and wanted to help us out. So that was shout out to Kellen for that. That's awesome. And everybody right now, anybody that's listening, thank you so much. Cap, all you guys, Singletary, I can't believe we're just dropping names like this. Is crazy, boys. Jimmy Mack, everybody that has helped out, Waddle, Jarrett Payton, everybody that's helped out with these videos, everybody that's clicked like, everybody that's reposted, retweet. Bearlismo, he jumped in there, dropped it for us. Thank you so much, buddy. Yeah, man, you just keep it going and trying to get those ticket sales up, because all of that is money that goes to fight against ALS. And it's also a really good party to celebrate a culmination of a man's career that deservedly so finally is here, man. And you guys know how I feel about this. He should have got it years ago. I mean, if Hampton got it in 2002, I think it was, and now we hear our 22 years later, like, come on, man. So it's whatever. But anyways, accentuate the positive. It's finally happening. And what are we? I think Cliff just said 7-8 days away, man. It's very, very exciting, and I'm excited about it all. Kyle, you guys are gonna have something. Larry Howley said he's popping on now. So you guys, if I don't get him in the studio, make sure you put him on first, please. Bottom right. Yeah, so it's really cool, everything that's happening, guys. Your thoughts on any of it before we get any further?
I just want to let you know, we're all excited for the next Thursday, the first, that game, Hall of Fame game. Hard Knocks is the 6th, I believe, that following Tuesday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that'll kick off literally within, I think, 5 days following that preseason game.
So now they're just filming everything, and then they go back and they fix it all, and then it goes out to everybody. Then is that what's going on?
Yeah, they've been there for a while. I know they did something with the Caleb signing. They were there for that. So yeah, they're getting into the nitty gritty, and they're going to have a lot of material when that first episode airs. I think that's what they kind of do, is before they air the first one, they let training camp start, kick off a little bit, and then they wait a week or two and then air it. Yeah,
man, unbelievable. I just and they're gonna go all out with HBO watching and stuff like this, and how could they not? And we're get extra coverage and stuff, guys. We're looking for any little thing, any little bit of content, not just as creators but consumers. I mean, we're eating it up, right? I mean, until the action, and the pads aren't even on yet, and we're just eating this up like it's crazy. So and what else is going on right now? I mean, we were talking about baseball, not a whole lot going on with that. You got some, team, women, NBA versus, the freaking USA, Olympics and all that kind of cool stuff. And, and our guys and barely squeaking past Sudan, which South Sudan, I just, the other day, I think it was like last week, I found out that our boy,
Luol Deng.
Luol Deng owns the team, or not owns it, but he coaches it, and
he finances it.
He finances it too.
Yeah, he pretty much back the whole damn program. Yeah,
back in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Hey, what's up, Larry?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
What's going on, Larry? Doing good. How are you?
Good to see you. How are things?
Good, man. I'm glad you could make it, and just coming fresh off the train and everything that you always keep yourself super busy. So in order to be able to get you in the building, man, it takes a lot. So what have you been up to these days lately?
So as a few of you know, as Brandon knows, I departed WGN in November. So I decided to take a new job. I'm working in the marketing department, social media for Ankin Law. So if you live in the Chicago area, you may have seen the commercials on Cubs games, Blackhawks games, Bulls games. You see the advertisements on buses. I run a lot of the social media there, so a lot of sports stuff that you'll see. Still keeping up with it. I wanted a little bit of a change. I had been in media for about 21 years, 25 overall if you go back to college. And I just was looking for something a little different. Media is, goes up and down, and I've been looking maybe a little bit for a second chapter, and was able to find it. So that's what I'm up to. But I still do sports videos, still do beer reviews, still doing the running and the marathon. So not much has really changed except for the job. But other than that, looks like you guys are doing well and building what you guys have got going on. So it's been exciting to see what you guys have been able to build here, and keep building on, and especially for what we hope will be is an exciting Bears season. We'll see how it all plays out, but it is training camp time. We're 8 days away from the preseason opener in Canton. So excited to see what it's all about. I've always said there's a different energy in the city when there's an expectation that the Bears may be good. You might remember, even though it didn't pan out in 2019, remembering the energy that was there, and remembering the energy that was there probably in like November, December of 18, and continuing into 19, probably till about early November when that season kind of tailed off. But like I said, things are going, and like I said, almost done with the summer, and the fall's just around the corner.
Yeah, I can tell you got a lot of sun out there. Got color in your face and everything. So been running the streets and stuff. I've been getting mine in the morning before I go to work. I'm on like the stair climber machine. I got like 70 floors with, I don't know, it was 700 or something steps. It was like 15 minutes, and then jump over to the treadmill, run for like 3 minutes, and then stop my heart from beating out of my chest and get down to a cool pace at like 4.2. I was up to almost 6, running, and down to 4, and then cool that down, and then look at my heart rate, and then bring it back up for a little bit, and then shut her down. And then that's all after I'm like, lifting weights and stuff like that. So I'm really, and then the whole like fork discipline, that's been key, because if I'm doing all this cardio crap, I don't want to just kill it with breakfast sandwich at McDonald's or freaking Dunkin' Donuts, or those little gem donuts that I like on the, and then you get all the powder all over your car and stuff, and if it pulls you over, it looks like you did a bunch of blow or something. Like, hey man, look at the size of me. Does it look like I have a problem except for donuts? No. Come on.
It's funny you bring that up, because I remember reading, this was going back probably almost 10, 11 years now. There was a reporter in Miami, I think it was a radio reporter, and he was driving home after one of the Heat celebration parties. And, when you're in the locker room, you get doused. Unfortunately, that's the one thing in my career I wish I'd had. I never had the locker room champagne celebration, but you get doused. So he was driving, and a cop pulled him over, and he smells champagne. So the first thing he's thinking is, he's like, no, I'm dead serious. I think he showed him his credential. I don't even think he had to do a breath test. I think he eventually believed him. But it's funny that you mentioned that. I always remember that story. I thought it was always comical. I'm surprised it actually doesn't happen more often if you do go back from a post-game celebration, because it gets a little rowdy in there. But no, it's great to follow your fitness journey. That's great. And, it's great to see what you do. And I've always said I love running, but, everybody has their thing. I had a friend lose 60 pounds in the elliptical. Some people love doing yoga, and they do hot yoga and all that. So, hey, whatever keeps you going, whatever you like doing, it's awesome. Whatever you want to do, and if you don't want to do it, then fine. I always says to his or her their own. So no, it's cool to see your journey.
What I have appreciated with your journey, and Brandon and Kyle was just saying, and they could touch on it too, is that you post a lot of Bears. And that is so cool that you're so entrenched, even though that's not really your number one for the day, So it's cool that you're that entrenched still, and still digging up all the nuggets and stuff, man,
Yeah, and it's still a passion. The passion never went away. I just wanted to, do something a little different. I felt like looking at in my life, in a professional life, in my own life, I wanted to develop some new skills, and not that I didn't love what I did. I will not lie to you. I cried 5 or 6 times in this station before I left. It was difficult to do that when you leave something like that. But I really wanted to do something that I believe would not only set a new course for my life, but I've always talked about before having like a second challenge in my life. But that doesn't mean that I leave that behind. I've told Brandon, you, or anybody else I've ever known in the business, if you need any help, I'm always willing to help in any way. If there's any advice that I can give, whatever I can give, I mean, I don't know how good it's going to be, but if anybody needs anything, I'm always happy to do that. The connections don't go away just because my job switches doesn't mean I do, and I love it. I can't wait for the Bears season to do fun content. I still like to do stuff. I thought about doing something called Sports of a Certain Age because I'm kind of that person. I'm entering my mid 40s now. I was a diehard sports fan going back to when I was 4, 5, and 6. So we're talking like the '84 Cubs, little bit of the '83 Sox, although I was about 3 years old. Of course, the '85 Bears, the emergence of Michael Jordan there in the mid to late '80s when the Bulls were still kind of picking up their steam. That's never really going to go away, and it's never going to. And part of the reason I took the job at Ankin is because there is a sports presence that made the transition for me a lot easier than just going somewhere completely off. Ankin has a great sports presence. Howard intentionally did that going back about now, I think about 9 to 10 years, where he was doing commercials with athletes, doing commercials during games. So this job allows me to be able to go ahead and do that. Howard also does a lot of stuff. I think I even saw something on here, a comment. He does stuff with David Kaplan, ESPN 1000. Still doing a lot of stuff there. We've done some stuff with Bleacher Nation as well this year. All these things are there to kind of thank you, Cliff. I appreciate it. So these are all there, and that's why I like this job, because just because I switch a job doesn't mean who I'm going to be changes. And is it an identity thing? Of course it is. I love WGN. I love Channel 9. It was heartbreaking and still can in some ways be emotional to think about that. But I look back in appreciation in the fact that I got to work at a station that I had so long, and I got a chance to now experiment and use those skills somewhere else. And at the same time, now maybe I'll come to find I need it and I'll go back and I'll find out I have to have it. But at the same time, it's cool to see people, Brandon, like you emerge, and so many young journalists, Josh Hicks, I think of, Eugene McIntosh, Terrence Tomlin of the Bigs, Drew Stevens of the Bigs. And, I think of Shakia Taylor of the Chicago Tribune, Annie Costabile of the Chicago Sun-Times, Ben Pope of the Sun-Times, all this new generation of journalists who are trained in the social media era. And it's awesome to see them. Eli Ong, who writes for WGNTV.com, and what he does. And he's a remarkable guy at what he does. So I got to have my fun. I'm very lucky. I'm among the 0.5% who got to do it. So I leave with joy, with some sadness because I do miss it, but I leave in some ways with joy in my heart to know I have what I wanted. And now it's time for a new generation to pick it up. And I do my little TikTok videos and Instagram videos, and maybe I'll start a podcast here at some point to fill the need. But, but I appreciate even these moments. I know there's been a couple others that have had me on, and some people who've even left the business themselves to try something new. So thank you, Brandon. This was great to get the invitation, and I appreciate your patience. The train went a little slow, and I just had to hop in the shower real quick. But other than that, it was great.
Yeah, it ain't like the old days where you could throw a little bit of more coal in the oven to get it go faster, man. It's you got to take your time and wait for it to get here. But what, we have almost 100 in the building now, and everybody's excited to see you, and also talk about training camp. But our guy Bearski, Paul, he put together a really nice video, so I'd like to share that with you and all of our viewers. Nice highlight reel of training camp and how it's going and stuff. So let me go ahead and pull that up, and we'll sit back and eat your popcorn. It's about 3 minutes, so if you got to get up, get you a tasty beverage from El Bandito, just make sure you drink responsibly, and come back in 3 minutes. Wow, what a cool
Nice.
video, huh, guys? So cool.
Yeah, it's cool to see it. It's still kind of amazing, I think, for me to see Caleb finally in uniform. I think it's one of those things I always feel like, it kind of goes back to me in Indianapolis when I worked there, and Andrew Luck. When the Colts were slumping that year, this would be like 2011. Automatically, the talk turned to Andrew Luck, and it stayed that way from about October all the way through until that spring when he finally did take the field, and then against in August when he finally did. It's been cool to see Caleb out there. And what's interesting is there is so much scrutiny on every throw, and with the practices being open to fans, you get a chance to see every single throw. For me, I think it's exciting just to, number one, be able to just see him in a Bears uniform and to see that vision that some may have had when that realization started coming up that the Panthers were going to be bad enough to the point where they might actually be able to get that number one pick. And now to see that realization come forward now. And I think to see Rome out there with DJ along with Keenan, makes it more exciting. So I think it's one of the things I always call the visual excitement of sports. It's when you first see the pads, when you first see there. I think I always think of like when the Bears first take the field in preseason. The games from a counting standpoint don't really mean much, but there is something exciting that first time you see it. And it's exciting to see this new era kind of begin. I think when you have an entirely new era, it really is something special. I think the same thing was kind of there with Fields when he started out. Maybe even a little bit with Trubisky, because there might have been a little bit more doubt with Trubisky, because I think overall there was doubt about that pick. I think there's a little bit more assuredness when it came to Justin Fields, and I think that's even more now with Caleb Williams. Excited to see it. But that was a great video. I like the pacing of it. And like I said, all hail to creativity, because I loved that when I was in the business.
Great job, Paul, man. Great job. Thank you so much. And Larry, seriously, there's a lot to unpack there. Brandon, what did you think about the video and kind of catching up with everything that's going on at training camp?
Yeah, well, first off, I want to say thanks, Larry, for joining us, and congratulations on your new endeavor, man. I wish you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree with Larry. It's exciting to see Caleb in the uniform, and he's a big dude. It didn't really look that way in college, but he has got a tremendously large lower half, man. He's the guy that's probably going to be a little harder to tackle than people give him credit for. And then just to see some of the guys that, like the very end, we got a snip of Tory Taylor. That's somebody I'm excited for. And then Austin Booker looked phenomenal in those videos. There was a few highlights of him, and I've been hearing nothing but good things. But yeah, to see the new pieces, the Caleb Williams, the Keenan Allens, the Tory Taylor, Gerald Everett so seeing those guys, man, and we all got excited as we read in the news day after day who the Bears added today. Swift, then Everett, then Allen, then Caleb, then odunze. But to see those guys all working together and knowing that they're hitting the ground running and getting some chemistry is even more exciting. And like Larry said, there was excitement around Fields and stuff, but you kind of got excited over the fact that the Bears took quarterback high, because that's not common for us, but especially in the first round. But this year, it's just so much more than Caleb. There's so many pieces. Even the coaching staff that they've added is exciting.
Yeah, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Larry and Brandon. It's nice to find. I think we've all watched every piece of highlight or video we can on Caleb Williams at college. It's time to get a new set of highlights, right? And it's just his God-given talent. His arm angles, his improvising, his ability to throw on the run. It's nice to see some of these clips, some of these highlights, and it kind of makes you think about where this all started, right? I mean, Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans beat the Colts at the end of the season to give the Bears the number one pick, then trade that pick away to the Carolina Panthers, who put a terrible team on the field. The first pick in the draft falls to the Bears again, and here they are. They land a guy who, we've talked about this before. It's not necessarily about how high of a ceiling Caleb Williams has, but how high is his floor? I mean, the Bears fans have just been tortured with poor quarterback play for the last 30 years, and it's nice to have somebody that looks like he's actually going to be the real deal. And the more of this stuff you watch, the more you hear, it seems like this is finally turning into fruition. And even like Brennan said, seeing some of those camp battles, like at center with Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton, and see how big of a leap guys like Gervon, Dexter, Zach Pickens have made. See if Tyler Scott's still part of this offense. Where Felix Jones is going to be. Ian Wheeler, who's already been signed to a 3-year contract. I mean, that's just what that highlight means to me is football is coming, guys. It's here.
Yeah, it's coming, and they're out there every day doing their due diligence. Just trying to sharpen their iron and sharpening their craft. Trying to be the better version of themselves every day. And you look at that, and you start to see what the dividends are paying off. Where the entire offensive line is showing up for work. They're all blocking. And then you see guys like Pickens, and then they're talking about Gervon and his weight loss and how good he looks and feels. And there's just so much, like just like a fresh air, and the thing about it is like Caleb has that like confidence and demeanor about him. And it almost holds you accountable on like a positive level, not like a damning level, but to the fact of, this kid is going to put the ball at the best spot for whoever it is that is in position to succeed. And you feel like you have to have his back and make sure that you put your hands on the ball, block, whatever it takes. And, I saw a who was that? Was that JJ? I think it might have been JJ. I'm not sure, but basically what they were saying was like, you look at the fact of the defense have always been like the big brother, beating up on the little brother. And I guess yesterday in training camp, they kind of fired back and they're like, yeah, that feels good. Finally they got something where they could fire back and have something to talk about. So it's cool that they've got a competitive spirit. They're pushing each other, and it's really cool. Keenan Allen, man, where did I just see Cliff? He just said something. Here we go. I love the way Keenan catches balls, uses his hands, and they're perfectly placed. We have a very special situation in front of us. Never ever. Well, aside from the obvious of the fact that we've been invited to go to Canton, Ohio and interview those players, the active players, and we've been so blessed with the 85 Bears and Bears in between, Olin Kreutz, them guys, Tommy Harris been able to interview, start, having conversations and building relationships with them. But now we're getting into some active players. Keenan Allen is the first on our radar where we're going to have a live event. I'd like to talk about that for a little bit and then watch another highlight video from Paul. Paul created another highlight video for us. So number 13 is the Bears fans' lucky number, October 1st. That's October 1st, guys. Keenan Allen is a man always on the move to catch. Number 13 while you can. Elite Icons Framing and Sports Memorabilia and Chicago Sports Podcast proudly present the Chicago Bears All-Pro wide receiver for a public autograph signing Tuesday, October 1st at 7 p.m. at Sports and More. That's 237 Yorktown Center in Lombard. CSP's, myself, Brandon Trax Hyatt, will kick off the night with a lively interview with Keenan Allen before the signing. Fans can get autographs, have Keenan sign their jersey, and receive special inscription tickets for as low as $45. For a complete list of autograph packages, visit info@eliteicons.biz.com. So we're really excited to be able to be a part of that and have a nice little podcast interview with Keenan Allen, Chicago Sports. This will be our very first endeavor. We're really excited about that. Larry, if you're not busy that night, I might need some backup, a little help. Let's go ahead and play that video really quick. It's not long. It's about 50 seconds, but it's a good one. Oops. I love his attention to detail, man. You could tell he's just dialed in. And what did you think about that video, Larry?
Well, I think the great thing for me and Allen is I've always thought that one thing that really helps a rookie quarterback, and I may go back to my previous experience, is having a really solid veteran receiver. So again, I'll go back to Andrew Luck in 2012 when he had Reggie Wayne.
Yeah.
And Reggie Wayne was still a productive player at that point, still really good, still trying to prove that he had another step left in his career. And in 2012, he really did. I don't know if you remember, there was a game against probably some of the real diehards. They played the Packers at Lucas Oil Stadium. The Colts are a pretty heavy underdog. And that was actually the week that Chuck Pagano had been diagnosed with cancer. And Reggie came up with one of the best games I think I've ever seen. He wore the orange gloves for Chuck. And I remember that he caught a touchdown, the game-winning touchdown, where he caught it. And I could see his gloves because I was shooting the game. And he used his hands to just barely get over the end zone and score. And if obviously DJ Moore is going to be that explosive guy to be able to do that. And he's going to have those abilities too. But to have a veteran like Keenan Allen, who's been there for a very long time, who's been productive for a long time, who's had a surge in his career, I think it's going to be really important because now, again, we talk about that three-headed monster, but Allen brings that experience. He brings that know-how, and I think that's going to be really important to Caleb, as while he is very talented, has to have a fair amount of adjustment to the NFL. I don't think any of us can think he's going to come in and be perfect. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to the Bears or anybody else. But I think if he can have these veteran receivers with him and someone like Keenan, and you can have DJ and you can have Odunze, you're going to have a really good solid group there. But I really think if he's going to succeed, Keenan's going to have a lot to do with that. And there's a lot for Keenan to play for as well, as he's looking to try to extend his career, extend the productive years of his career. And perhaps if this is a Bears team that has indeed gotten some momentum, he may want to attach himself to that. And again, and, not only, long the championship drop for him, but also be a part of a team that if the Bears won the Super Bowl and were able to pull that off and end what's now almost a 4-decade drought, that's really important. Keenan is the guy to really watch this year. In my opinion, maybe one of the top 5 guys to watch because he's going to have a big role in helping Williams succeed, which obviously will be the number one storyline this year and probably for a couple of years to come.
I almost felt like that was very, very important, but then we already had DJ. So, Brandon, to piggyback off of what Larry just said, how important it is to have somebody in the building, somebody there that, is always trying to perfect his craft, even at the age and the level that he's at. Why do you think it's so important to have not just one, but 2 seasoned veterans to help out guys like, Odunze and maybe even Caleb,
Well, I think it's huge just in regards, just in the football aspect is huge because now you're putting the defense on their heels. Really, these are 2 receivers that both require attention and more than the average receiver. I mean, you've got to double one of these guys, you figure, and now you've got Odunze in the mix too. But yeah, just to piggyback off Larry as well, to have a veteran in any room, any skill room, right? So your tight ends, your DBs, your linebackers, to have a veteran at each one of those positions is really important. But to have a guy who was 31 years old last season, right? He just turned 30 in April, and he finished in 13 games out of 17. He finished with 108 receptions and 1,200 yards. So it's not like the Bears just went out and got this guy who's like, oh, he can mentor these young guys. He's got the wisdom, he's got the experience. No, he's still playing football at a really high level. I mean, I imagine if he plays all 17 games last season, he finishes as probably a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. So yeah, it's going to be huge for Odunze's learning process. He's probably going to, if I were him, I'd be in Keenan Allen's pocket. I wouldn't leave that guy's side. But DJ Moore as well, he's a young guy. I think he's 25, but still a little, he's got some savvy. He's a veteran as well. And he's played on some really bad football teams. So, that's a guy who can help the young guys with kind of the trial and tribulation that is the NFL. No matter how good you are, you're only as good as the team you're on. You're right. So it's going to be important. It's going to be important that Rome learns from Keenan, who's been doing this as long as he has, and talk about adversity. I mean, that guy's been on some really bad football teams as well. So it's going to be important for Keenan and DJ Moore to mentor a guy like Odunze. And I think it's going to be really important for, I don't know if you guys seen the films from practice yet, but it seems like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen are kind of glued to each other. Every time I see these 2 guys are just kind of shooting the ship with each other. So that's cool, man. It's they're laughing a lot. Keenan Allen was making a joke about told DJ Moore that he's going to be the guy that's going, he's going to be the deep ball target. And DJ Moore just looked him in the face and laughed like, "You got to be kidding me, man! At 32 years old, you ain't. I'll take care of that. Don't you worry about that." So yeah, it's cool. It's cool because Keenan Allen also seems like just a very likable player as well, and that's important inside a locker room, especially in that Bears locker room. They're really big on character, man.
I think at that age too, and Larry talked about this with his own career, and as I'm starting to move with mine, at the steel mill, and that it's the work that you put in the relationships. The work ain't hard; it's the people, and having relationships and having a culture and being able to pour into people and just really be a good human being. And that's really hard to come by nowadays. I mean, it's not to say that there's not good human beings out there, but I think sometimes we get so caught up in the rat race of life, and everything that's going on, that we don't stop and smell the roses and just check on our fellow coworker or something like, "Hey man, how you doing? What's going on? You look like you got something going on. Is there, maybe there's not, whatever, but and I think that's the kind of guy that when you try to build this, you got to have a young guy. You got to have a young guy that, oh no, hold on a second. Poles doesn't like a guy that's over 30 or whatever. This guy in the building is important. Now, I want to ask a question to Kyle really quick. When we got him, Kyle, not only the age might have been a concern, the amount of money, the fact that we already had DJ, the potential that we might get Marvin Harrison or something like that. Did you at first think what you might not feel now, but that it was like a wasted, signing, the 4th round pick or the trade for the 4th round pick and that type of money, whatever, we could have maybe used it for defense or something else or offensive line? Were you kind of like not on board as much as you are now, or where are you at with all this?
No, I love this. I love the trade. I mean, first of all, they got him for a 4th round pick. You're not going to get a talent like Keenan Allen in the 4th round. I mean, maybe you will. A guy like Tyreek Hill was drafted in the 5th, but it's very few and far between. It's rare. Not only that, but like Larry and Brennan said, I mean, he's the consummate professional. You don't really hear much. A lot of these star wide receivers in the NFL seem to end up being prima donnas, guys who want the ball all the time. They want more money. We heard today that out of Houston Texans training camp that it seems like Stephon Diggs started a fight with somebody, maybe even threw punches. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you'd like to avoid. Like Brennan said, Ryan Poles is a huge character guy. He's done it time and time again. And this is not a signing like Mercedes Lewis or Jason Peters, who can kind of hold his own, but he's well beyond his years and his career's pretty much reached its end. Keenan Allen is still playing at a very high level. And a lot of these young guys like odunze, Caleb Williams coming to the NFL, it's not just the football side of things. I mean, these guys need to learn how to manage their money. They need to learn how to manage their time, the intangibles of being an NFL professional player. And I think these guys like Keenan Allen can help them out. I think it was probably I think it's the best trade Ryan Poles has made since he's been here, besides the Carolina Panthers trade, obviously. And I think Keenan Allen is a great security blanket for Caleb Williams. He's always been good on 3rd down. He could play in the slot. He could play on the outside. He's willing to run across the middle of the field, and he always seems to be open, right? I mean, he's a touchdown machine. I honestly don't think it could be a better fit for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
Now,
real quick, Brandon, and then within weeks of being a Chicago Bear, remember that Keenan Allen showed up to support Caleb Williams on his pro day, which I thought was really cool too.
Yeah, and I think it's like important to have that go-to guy. But Larry, you've interviewed quite a few stars. Do you think that that's very important for a rookie to have a guy like that in the building? Obviously, that Cali connection where he's seen some games and whatnot, and that kind of goes into, okay, now I've got DJ to the left, I've got or to the right, and I've got, Keenan, at any position really, as far as receiver. And then I've got Odunze, which I've seen him at a very high level in college. But mostly with this whole, what we're unpacking right now is Keenan. Do you feel like that speaks volume, and like Brandon said, a safety blanket type thing? Do you think that is more value than a lot of other things, just for that quarterback to have that comfort level?
I've always felt that way, and it can be a luxury sometimes. As some of these quarterbacks go to teams that they're not good, or they're rebuilding. Sometimes you get a veteran who's late. You will have Mercedes Lewis too, who will be there as well on offense.
Oh
I
yeah,
know he's kind of winding down his career. You're not really looking at him really for a tremendous amount of production, but you are looking at him for leadership. I think it's incredibly important, especially for somebody who's going to have that spotlight like he will. I'm going to venture to say that no quarterback in the history of the Bears may have the spotlight than Caleb Williams will have coming up here, certainly this season, certainly next season, because he's coming in to start right away, and that's something that did not happen for Trubisky. He was not expected to start. He was kind of elevated to that. It was not expected of Fields, although we all kind of thought he probably would start. Caleb's in from day one. He's there, and I think jogging the memory, I think McMahon was kind of in that situation where he basically started from about day one. I'd have to kind of look it up a little bit. But
sure.
Even he wasn't a number one overall pick whom Bears fans were looking at to be possibly the pick. I think some people may have even thought about it even going back to the end of 2022 when they did get the number one overall pick. And you never know who you're going to trade that to. Maybe you do get it. Maybe Williams is even on people's radars even going back then. So I think it's incredibly important to have a veteran. I think it helps – even more, maybe even then, to have a really veteran quarterback, even maybe at the same point, because you get somebody who's going to be there on the field every time. You're not going to have another quarterback out there, so he's going to be somebody who will be there on a play-to-play basis because he's going to have his bumps. He's going to have his bruises. There's going to be moments that are going to be there, and it's not fair of any of us to think that that's not going to happen. Caleb Williams could struggle for the first half of the season. That could very well happen. He could be dynamite the first half of the season. Most likely he'll be all of that and more, but you'll just see everything probably in the first half of the season. But he certainly has a fantastic situation that he's coming into, especially really in number one beginning with the wide receivers. And you can't underestimate the power of a veteran like Allen to be out there. I'm not discounting DJ Moore. I'm not discounting Odunze. I'm not at all. I'm just thinking that Keenan is there, and I think that he's going to play a really important role.
I agree with you 100%. There's a reason why they brought him in the building. Definitely got to trust the process, and so far you could see production. He hasn't missed anything. I would like to turn our attention really quick to the offensive line. As we all know, that's my favorite topic. And Illinois Jones just brought up, he says he's concerned about left tackle. Jones is still out. The rookie isn't practicing, and we've seen Larry be there. That will never cut it. He is hardly a swing. Is Rome so good that taking a OT in a wide receiver heavy, I think he's trying to say the draft wasn't right. That that maybe because it was such a deep draft, that instead of the first round that we should have went offensive line. Larry, what's your thought on that?
That's a great point, and I thought actually that might be where they would end up going, but it seemed like
I did too.
kind of on their mind, when they're going there. You can never have enough offensive linemen. I was in the camp in 2018, going back a little bit, when I thought if Quentin Nelson was on the board, I thought the Bears should get him. If he was there at number 8, I thought he should go ahead and get him because I thought he was that good. And as it's turned out, he's been a solid lineman. Now it's hard. You don't usually take a guard that high in the draft, but I do have a heavy thought on offensive line play. You got right there, in the draft, a couple of years, a couple of years ago, excuse me. And I thought that he is, certainly showing some improvement. That's a good question. And I think it is one that only history will tell. And I know that that's an easy excuse to say. And offensive linemen sometimes don't work out. We've seen a number of Bears tackles that they try to take going back, Stan Thomas back in 1990, Mark Colombo. There have been others that are escaping me at the point that have not worked out. I'm not against them taking Odunze. I thought, you know what, you have a chance to pair two guys who potentially can be your combination for years to come. I didn't fault it, although I do understand it. And obviously they went offensive line going later on. That is going to be a question. Is Larry Borom going to be? Is he? Larry Borom's been, a little bit of a Swiss Army knife as you've kind of gone through here the last couple of years. The Bears dealt with a lot of offensive line. I think one thing I might be excited with the line is Ryan Bates being there and being a center. If they can solidify that position, I think that would
Yeah.
be something that would be wonderful if that could happen. I think that would be a nice thing to have because the Bears really haven't had, their center position has been a little bit in flux for a while. So I think that you can have that. I mean, really, really a while it's been there. And I think that's something that you were really, a lot of people were looking at. But I get that. I mean, an offense, if the Bears had gone with a tackle at 9, I wouldn't have been like, oh my God, they passed a receiver. I thought it would have been a solid pick. In my mind, I was kind of torn. I didn't know which way they would go. But they went with the combination. I don't fault them going for that. I mean, the easy excuse is time will tell what you're going to do. But yes, the offensive line's a concern because if you don't protect a quarterback, then you got problems. Even no matter how mobile and how good Caleb has shown as we've seen on film, his ability for improvisation in the pocket and being able to move is great.
Yeah.
But so I think it is. He brings up a very valid point. And again, if you can't get that tackle, protected, you have an issues with the tackle. Things can get pretty long. Really good point brought up, and one that I will wonder, and I think a lot of people will wonder, and one of the great storylines that will develop this season.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because you got like Kyle Long. They converted him over, in another position, still offensive line, but each one's different. I've been bounced around and I did okay with the other ones, but I felt more comfortable at left and it's just more rewarding. And then like Jenkins, same thing, signed as a tackle, had some injury concern, whatever, brought in at guard, and he does good at right and left. So we never really know how these guys can turn out. I think the one thing right now that I really appreciate is the continuity and being out there every day. I see that I know it's early. We're only like day 5, but the thing about it is though, is it's starting to build, and every day you can only do what you can do with the day that God gives you, and they're out there, getting it. So I like that. And I saw Shelton, he was out there, he was blocking one play where the ball was, or Scott had a little trouble with his feet, still caught the ball. Shelton was blocking Pickens, really nice block there. Again, pads against your teammate, they're probably telling you 50, 65%, which is weird when you hear that. But it all looks good. And Shelton was making his blocks. He blocked from inside out over, in his gap, and they both fulfilled their, assignments and whatnot. It looks good. And like you said, you've got Ryan there to back him up as center/guard. So there's definitely some stuff in play there. A lot of people are still not out on Jones yet. I mean, honestly, I don't know what they are not really showing him as far as like what he did in the weight room, if he hit the squats hard and he's actually got an ass now and some legs, but he can anchor down and stuff, and the hips are a problem with him, but he's still a good, decent, average, left tackle, and he can get better. And all of the weapons, they're also what helps out Larry is if you got a really good, solid guard. Well, a guy like Jenkins, if he's next to you, he can help with the inside. And as you focus on your left side and start to build stronger with your inside presence, he can help double down with you and protect some of your assignments and really give you that. It's about building, what's the word I'm looking for? Confidence. It's about building your confidence. When you're weak about something, you have a guy that steps in all the time and covers that for you. And it's almost like it's not there, but you and him know it's there. Now, the problem happens is if that guy gets injured and shift over to right guard or somebody else comes in, now you're like, oh God, the guy that always picks that up for me is not here no more. It's very important to keep the guys put and not do a bunch of, this ain't hockey. You can't just keep doing line changes that not affect your offensive line. Continuity is very important. So I think we're building something really good, and I think we got a quarterback that can actually make us look better. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be like a Peyton Manning where he's going to orchestrate guys and move them around and how you doing, keep it moving, 5-4-3-2, Omaha, blah, 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 move guys around and all this cool stuff, and then just drop it like it's hot and just because he reads everything, he sees everything, and he waits for the defense to get antsy and show me one little thing, and I'm going to come right at it. You know what I'm saying? I think that we can see some of that, not all of that, but I think that this guy has the mental capacity to make some of that stuff happen and make our offensive line. Because Larry, as far as we know, to my knowledge, there wasn't a whole lot of first-round draft picks going to the offensive line of the Indianapolis Colts. There was like some undrafted guys, some late draft picks. There wasn't a whole lot of first-round draft picks. So for everybody out there that thinks that we have to get solid, like Dallas Cowboys did that, and it didn't work for them either. Like they just had a really badass offensive line, So it's not always your end all be all. You know what I'm saying, Larry?
No, and it is, and Jeff Saturday, who is the center for the Colts, and with his incredible career, he was an undrafted guy released by the Ravens. I think he was going to be an electrician or something like that, and the Colts signed him, and he becomes the centerpiece of a great battery with him and Peyton Manning. And you don't know where stars are going to come from. That's why the draft is not perfect. It's not, nothing is perfect when it comes to these evaluations. When it comes to quarterback, you don't know. And these general managers take risks. We saw Ryan Pace take a massive risk when he took Mitchell Trubisky at number 2 overall and made the trades. That's part of it. A lot of it is these general managers taking chances, signing the right people. Ryan Grigson in Indy took a heck of a lot of heat, after Luck, when Andrew Luck was getting beat up. He did try to sign linemen. They didn't work. Like they just didn't, all of them got injured. They signed Donald Thomas. He got hurt. They signed, I'm trying to jog my brain a little bit. They signed other guys, didn't work. They had AQ Shipley. They switched Jonathan Harrison to be the center. Didn't quite work out. All these things are linear, and it is. And that's why I'm always kind of like, as I watch, and I always did in my career, I always watched with kind of a calmer mindset, because you don't know what any of these guys are going to be. Could Caleb become Peyton Manning and become the Crafts? Absolutely. Any of these guys, yes, it could happen. Anything can do it. So he's a talented guy. He's charismatic. I'm a huge fan of Caleb. I really think, and I was a huge fan of Fields, and I was sad to see him go. But there were so many times and so many things you look at it where you had to take Caleb. That pick had to be made, and he was too talented and too good. And people talk about all the other things. With Caleb, it never was that. He seemed like a strong, confident player who was his own person. I like the fact he had his own personality. I'm a big fan of athletes having their own personality and being their own unique self, going back to when I was a kid and there was Dennis Rodman and watching what he did. And I really, with Jim McMahon, the Roselle headband. We talk of Steve McMichael, and now those guys were all their own players. So we see this now in other sports. We see Angel Reese coming up with the Chicago Sky and how she is her own dynamic personality. So I love dynamic personalities, but I'm a calmer sports guy. Maybe that's why I'm not screaming and being on everywhere. I'm a very calm person. I am a very wait and see. I think there's optimism. I think there certainly is. I can't imagine a lot of rookie quarterbacks coming in with the weapons that Caleb currently has. He has an offensive line that isn't somewhat still in flux. There's a lot of questions there. And by the way, Teven Jenkins is going to end up being one of the great stories. If he indeed gets a contract extension, the Bears do well this year. Let's just say that they're at the playoff line or above the playoff line this year, make the postseason, where I think right now my mind kind of sits. Is it right about the playoff line? Could they explode and do something? Of course, it's the NFL. Those things can happen. But if Tevin's able to get that deal, you're talking about a guy I don't know if this regime had a lot of faith in. Let's go back to training camp in 2022 when he kind of disappeared there for a little bit. Looked like he might get traded. Now he's one of your guys you're looking at on the offensive line that could be something for the future. And, I'm really excited to see how it's all going to turn out. That's my little diatribe. But I think really for me, for Williams, it's really exciting to see what he's going to become. And I think it's a really exciting time. That's why I see so many people fight on Twitter and all that. For me, it's a great time of observation and optimism to see where all this is going to go and to see where Caleb is going to handle the successes he will have and the natural things you'll have as a rookie quarterback, which you'll struggle with. Maybe he doesn't struggle. That might even be too much of an assumption. But I think it's going to be interesting to see the road that he leads and see kind of the road that he goes on.
There's another Williams that a lot of people are talking about, Connor Williams. And this always concerns me because another man's junk is another man's treasure. And right now, the junk in the trunk is Connor Williams, and everybody's talking about this. And I'm wondering why, of all 31 other teams, well, maybe their offensive lines, but I doubt it, are that great that they don't need a guy like Connor. Is there something that possibly that we are overlooking because we're thirsty for another toy in town that Connor needs to work or sort through why he's not getting picked up or getting a big contract by not only just us, but the other 31 teams?
I mean, it's just kind of one of those things that has to feel its way out. Maybe he's looking for a situation and a team may look in a situation where it works. It's not, remember, you said, Brandon, it's worked through day 5. So everybody's trying to figure out what they want to do, and they want to figure out where they're going to go. So you don't really know. So, there's always, I think, an interesting time for me is always after that training camp, after you kind of get through the preseason, who's available. Okay. The Bears, maybe they find their edge there. Although I like Booker. Booker's interesting. I find a lot of times in drafts, there's always that edge rusher that excites you. And he's kind of that guy that does it for me. I remember Travis Gibson when he came out of Tulsa and how kind of an exciting pick that was because he had shown some tremendous ability. Here in Chicago, he showed a little bit of it, not as much of it. He had probably a little of the misfortune of being a draft pick of the previous regime, and he didn't have enough productivity to be able to kind of stay there and then to be able to kind of remain at that point. So I don't really get. I think it is kind of a feeling out process. These athletes stay in such great shape now, as we saw. Now, granted, it's a little bit, as well. You know what? You saw that with Jason Peters. Remember when Jason Peters signed in 21? He just kind of came off. I think he was fishing when Pace called him. So these athletes stay in shape. They're ready to do what they need to do. And as Cliff points out, you've got the ACLs, you've got all those things, and all those things are part of it. I think a lot of times they are, I think, and maybe Poles is trying to figure out where he is, and maybe he doesn't have to. Remember, they are still building a team, and don't get me wrong, if the Bears win 5 games this year, that's going to be a problem. If they win 5 to 7 games this year, that's going to be a problem. Because, in the NFL, you don't get forever. You don't get that runway that you might get in baseball. You might get in basketball if you're building up some prospects. Or as we see right now with the Blackhawks, they may have 1 or 2 years left of runway, although they made some signings this year where it seems like they're going to at least be trying to chip away at the end of it. So I don't know. Like I said, it can be a multitude of reasons. I don't know how much to really read into it. These teams have their own studies and their own evaluations of players. But if they're going to need something and the Bears do have some room, then maybe they go get them.
Yeah, I'm all about trusting the process, who's in the building, who's there right now, learning the playbook, the continuity, everything. You might get somebody in the building like Connor, and he just doesn't fit the vibe of what's going on. He might just be totally off, whereas you got everybody, doing well right now. And now you're just bringing in an insider. Not saying that is I consider that more of an emergency, pull cord situation to go grab a guy like him than I would, and that's also because of injuries other than have a guy that's already in the offensive line. And I also think last year when we had not many weapons and a guy that isn't as astute about, reading defenses and getting the ball out fast enough. When you hold on to the ball that long, you don't get it out fast enough. You don't have those weapons. Obviously, you saw Caleb, where he was the Heisman and he had, great receivers and a good offensive line, good defense, what that can do for him. You could see that. And then the year after, which was this year, how those guys barely even got drafted as receivers. And he didn't have anybody to throw to. But to that point, if you can get that ball off that, you guys might really wake up and myself included, and be like, this offensive line is not that bad. Maybe it was we had a crappy offensive coordinator who all he wanted to do is throw screen passes, and we had to do that, hold on to the ball way too damn long and no weapons to throw to. You take all that away, you guys talk about Caleb and Keenan Allen making jobs easier. They can also make an offensive line's job easier too. So you might see a whole different offensive line out there, fellas. But I want to ask Kyle a question because I know he's got a lot of knowledge over there. What do you think about all this that we're talking about? Is there anything in, because I know you and Brandon were very hot on Austin Booker. Do you think that the answer, if we had to spend, when there's not a lot of money, do you guys know what the cap is right now, Kyle?
No.
Well, right, so right now I believe they have about $12 million in cap space available.
Okay, so if they said we need to go address the defensive line or offensive line, where would you go first, Kyle?
I mean, I like Connor Williams a lot. I know he's coming off the ACL. I know he went and met with the Seahawks yesterday, and they claim that they've already started negotiations. I mean, but
Oh, wow.
when Connor Williams was healthy last year for the Dolphins, he was one of the best centers in the NFL. And
Okay.
I think personally that a veteran, a good center is probably one of the most important things on the field to a rookie quarterback. You know, that early on when Caleb was trying to learn these cadences, these audibles, these play calls, the center's going to help out with a lot of it. And we've seen the Bears do this thing where they sign guys or move guys from one position to another, like Whitehair, where they signed Lucas Patrick, and it just didn't work out. And I'm getting kind of that same vibe from Ryan Bates. Now, obviously, Ryan Bates is not the same guy. He has shown he's had some success in the NFL, but his success was primarily at the guard position, not at the center position. If you go back and look at his snaps at center, he wasn't very good. Now, that's a totally different system, and I don't know, maybe Poles proves us all wrong, and Bates comes over here and he's one of the best centers in football. Who knows? Like Larry said, football is a conundrum. You can never. It's all guessing, right? But as far as the draft goes, I mean, I think that Rome Odunze was the right pick. For me personally, if you're not going to trade out of that spot, you take the best available player. I think Rome Odunze was the best available player.
That's a good point.
The top two tackles are already off the board at that point. I mean, obviously, if Joe Alt had fallen to the Bears number 9, it'd be a totally different discussion. But the top two tackles are off the board at that point. If you're going to if you want to draft offensive line at that point, I would trade back. I like that the Bears, if they were going to keep their number 9 pick overall, they went with Rome Odunze. But ultimately, I think the Bears should at some point sign a defensive end, at least as insurance. You know, they keep talking about these guys in training camp who keep making plays like DeMarcus Walker and Jacob Martin. But let's face it, man, these guys have been perennial backups for their entirety of their career. I mean, Jacob Martin's been in the NFL for 7 years now and has 18 sacks. He's not a guy who's going to come in here and get you 10 sacks in a season. A guy I would like to see them at least talk to or bring in for a visit is Carl Lawson from the Jets last year. You know, I know Carl Lawson's had a lot of injury problems, but for the most part, he's been a pretty good player when he's on the field. You know, he's been in the NFL for 6 years. He's had 27 sacks in limited play. Even when he wasn't hurt, he was playing on a limited basis. He was stuck behind a bunch of studs on the Jets defensive line. It was tough for him to find playing time. But I mean, from what I saw, the projected contract for him this year would be a 1 year, $3 million contract. And I think the Bears can afford that. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go get a Yannick Ngakoue and spend $10 million on 1 year, but bring somebody in here at least as an insurance policy for this defensive line, right? If Montez Sweat gets hurt and Gervon Dexter doesn't make these huge leaps and bounds that they keep talking about, you guys, we're going to be back down there as one of the worst pass rushers in the NFL again. I mean, you got to do something. I mean, if the Bears feel like they're competitive and they can compete for playoff position now, I'd like to see them pull trigger on somebody like Carl Lawson.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. And the good thing about that is if you want to kind of sprinkle them in there every once in a while, third down where it's, you know, a passing down, right? Or we've got a lot of points, Lord willing, knock on wood. We got a lot of points there behind, kind of like the way the Colts played. We'll go back to the Colts. Peyton Manning threw a bunch of touchdowns, and now you got the lean guys on the outside, Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney, you know, let's go out of them, boys. We're up 3 or 4 touchdowns. Let's put the pressure on them, force an interception. You know what I mean? Just make sure that Bob Sanders don't get injured because now all hell will break loose. But seriously, man, I really like what you're saying, Kyle. I agree. I think you have to just keep building and adding to whatever. Hopefully these guys that they're picking up and signing, I think there was a linebacker they signed the other day, didn't have godly numbers and stuff, but they look at all this RAS and stuff and all these things and what they need and want and whatever. So hopefully they got what's going on. But I will tell you something, boys, we're almost spoiled at the point because this team looks really good. Offense, defense, special teams. Heck, we're getting so fancy pinkies up that we went out and got ourselves a crocodile punter. And like this guy's got trajectory and he can spin it around and he could freaking like that drone Brandon was talking about. He could drone the ball and put it right at the 1 yard line, you know? So, I mean, what do you think about all this, Brandon? Are you excited about what we got in the building? Do you think we still need to fine tune it a little bit, or wait till next year when we get a multitude of draft picks and comp picks and all this other stuff?
I think the Bears are. I think the Bears are content with what they have, and I think the number one question is just: is there somebody better than the guy you got? Do I think that's out there? No. Does it hurt to have depth? No. But Braxton Jones is a player who's gotten better season after season. He did suffer an injury, and I would also tell Illinois Jones, Eberflus did an interview on July 20th stating that the injury is nothing serious. They're just playing cautionary. They're playing it cautionary with Braxton Jones. They don't want to further any injuries. He will be back soon. And they drafted Karan Amagaji with that quad injury, knowing he wasn't going to be ready for this season. That was something the Bears were well aware of. But I think Booker is a project guy. He's somebody that I think they're going to work with his conditioning and where his weight is at. Karan is a guy who's ready to play as soon as he's healthy. So I think they feel like they have a guy on the back burner if they have an issue at tackle. But, Larry mentioned earlier, the Bears also went out and re-signed a guy like Mercedes Lewis, who's not going to go out and catch you, 500 yards. That guy is there to be he's a big boy. He's going to be there on the line. He's going to be there. Braxton Jones is going to be right between Mercedes Lewis and Teven Jenkins. So, I mean, if the guy, and like you said, Brandon, I thought you made a good point. And Chris Emma was on Bernstein and Holmes the other day on 670, and he said the biggest difference between Justin Fields and Caleb Williams so far, what he's seen so far, is Williams' ability to process. And we know how the NFL works, guys. It's a game of seconds, right? So a corner can only cover a receiver for so long, and an offensive line can only block for a quarterback for so long. So
you ain't lying.
If you don't have a guy like Justin Fields anymore, and I'm not trying to disrespect Justin Fields, but he did hold the ball. We saw that even in training camps. Even in training camps, they were talking about Justin Fields' inability to process the field. So if Williams is able to do that at a high level, the offensive line will naturally improve. I do believe that. So I think they're content with what they have on the offensive side of the football in the trenches. I could see him making a signing on the defensive line, but it's probably, I'm going to be honest with you, Bears fans, it's probably not somebody that you're going to be, jumping for joy about. It's going to be a depth piece. And if it is, it's going to be cheap.
Brandon, I just thought about something. Now we got these cuts coming up, right? You got to get it down. You got to balloon all the way up to what is it, Larry? You're good with the numbers. It's
somewhere
like
about 99 or 90, I think is.
Yeah, it's like almost 100 guys.
I think now. I know they do the different. Yeah, somewhere around there, somewhere in the 80s or 90s, I think is where they start out, and then they'll lean.
And then you get down to 52, 53,
yeah,
whatever.
I wonder if this year, it's funny. I haven't looked quite as closely if it's still the mass cut, where it's just everybody gets cut at the end. I think it's still the mass cut.
But you might have some guys that are still productive, right? So look, we didn't realize this rookie was just going to jump out, Kyle, and just like go bananas, right? I mean, our guy might be Austin Booker. So if we got it, folks, we might have a guy that is going to leave the building because Austin just shines. And right now it sounds like he's already got the an endorsement of Montez Sweat, and I would go off of what Montez Sweat. I mean, he's with them, blah, 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 whatever. But if he really goes out there, we might lose a guy that's like, whoa, what about me? Like that Robinson or something. Wouldn't we have like a guy that we
Robinson?
Yeah. So, and I'm not even that. Maybe that's a bad example because maybe on another team, a guy's more productive than Robinson. But I'm just getting at you might get your guy Kyle. You might get your guy Brandon later on. After things settle down and guys start cutting and stuff, we might find some of that. That might be exactly what Poles is looking for, Larry. You might be looking for somebody on the offensive line and defensive line on the cheap. I can just sprinkle in and be like, hey, dude, you lucky you got a job now because you just got cut. Try us, So I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but I'm really happy with what we got in next year. God, what is it, Brandon? What did you say that one is like 10 draft picks or something crazy?
Currently, I believe 9, and I was going to say 9? That too, Brandon. If Poles sees a glaring hole on the defensive line, let's say we don't sign that bargain free agent before the season starts.
Yeah.
He believes this team has potential to go to the playoffs, and once you get there, anything can happen, right?
Mhm.
If we're getting close to the trade deadline, you have 9 picks. So you better believe that there's going to be a team that underachieves, that has some sell high pieces, some quality defensive linemen. And if Poles thinks that's the one piece that will solve the problem, he'll go out and get that. I'm not talking about Trey Hendrickson, a $100 million player. I'm talking if there's a team that's loaded with talent on the defensive side of football, like the Commanders were when they made the Chase Young trade and the Montez Sweat trade, something like that could fall into Poles' lap again, because like you just said, the draft capital he has next season is a lot.
I think it's 8 picks. I think they traded one to acquire Austin Booker in this year's draft.
Well,
I think they were at 9, and now they're down to 8.
Isn't it 8? Isn't there a conditional pick though, where they might possibly become 9? Something maybe with Justin Fields. I thought there was a.
Well, no, that pick is accounted for. It's a 6th that could become a 4th if Justin Fields plays more than 50% of the snaps. Do you mind if I ask Larry a question real quick? Is that
dude? Have at it, please. Take some pressure off me.
Larry, would you, for me personally, with a rookie quarterback coming into the NFL and Caleb Williams, I've been quoted on the CSP podcast saying that I would rather have seen the Bears more aggressively go after a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry than sign DeAndre Swift. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't mind the Swift signing. I mean, I like it. I think you've got to add an offensive weapon. I was great with Swift. I thought he gives you a lot of versatility at that position. You're not going to have to spend a metric ton of money to get him. I like the signing personally. I think that it adds another dimension. I don't think you can ever have enough firepower at that position, especially when you have. I never underestimate the running game. It's one thing you look at that. I always think if you can have that. I always thought, and we'll go back a little bit, and I'm not trying to go back. But I remember like the Bears losing Jordan Howard. I always thought kind of hurt them a little bit. Mm-hmm. I know it's a little bit random. I like the Swift signing a lot. I'm like at that, for me, that fit right away. I know some people thought about, I know there was the high apple pie of Saquon. I didn't know if that was really where you wanted to go with that position there. Swift, I thought was a good player to have at that position. That was a good one for me. So I did not have a problem with that. I was fairly excited about that pick, at least me personally. I know some disagree. They should have gone another way. I liked it. I really felt like that was the right pick for what they were looking for. And as they continue to evaluate their own talent that they have right now on the roster as well. So I didn't mind it. I thought it was good. I like that pickup. That for me, I'm like, okay, that works. That's a good one that gets you what you're looking for. And I thought it was great. I don't know what your thoughts were. Like, I know you just expressed it a little bit. Swift to me was fine. I thought that fit right what you were looking for, adding a little bit more dynamic at that position, giving your other guys you've got on that roster to be able to do that. I liked it. I liked where it was at, personally.
I like Cushenberry before we got Sweat. Sweat wasn't even on my radar, Larry. Obviously, after he showed what he was worth and what he could do and how he just, I wouldn't say single-handedly, transformed our defense, but there was obvious present and a total change after he got in the building. Now, that looking in the rear view, it's an obvious answer, but I was with Kyle. I love the Cushenberry, and I really wanted to get him. There was a huge need for center. It really bothers me. I don't know what's going on with two guys, Ian Cunningham and Poles, both played offensive line in the NFL at a high level, and we don't have a freaking center, and sometimes the ball was being hiked over to damn. I mean, if we didn't have, Fields jumping up there and shooting to the moon and bringing it down and then scrambling just to get a yard out of it, there's been some times where we really would have lost our butts, So
actually, they said Ryan Bates rolled 2 snaps on the ground today in training too.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I don't, it's the center position to me that's really, and when was the last, if you're looking at consistent centers for the Bears,
Olin Cruz, yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's really it. I mean, you're thinking about it. I mean, I know Cody had it for a little while. James Daniels, I'm trying to think if he played a little center or was he mainly sitting at guard. I'm just trying to kind of rack my brain a little bit. You had Mustafa
Garza
there. What?
Roberto Garza switched from guard to center.
Yeah, he was there for a little while. And then you're
Hilkenberg before all those guys.
Yeah, way back in the day, and you had that. I'm trying to rack my brain a little bit.
You got Mustafa there. Larry.
Never really got this, but they really haven't, since Cruz. I'm trying to just over the last few minutes rack my brain. I'm like, Yeah, that's kind of really about what they've had, and
Yeah,
they've been,
I
they've been
agree.
trying to really. That's the problem with the Bears; they really haven't had on offense any consistency at all. That's where you really, maybe that's the best thing about this thing is maybe you have the best shot here now to have consistency. I mean, who was probably the best play? And yeah, he's right. Cody was good.
Cody was a good guard. When
Cody
he
was a
snapped the
good
ball,
guard.
he had a
Cody
lot
was a
of
good
work.
guard, and it with the weird things that were happening, he kind of got forced out, out
He
a
could
little
not
bit.
snap the ball. I did go
Yeah,
back to
no,
highlights. Cody freaking snapping the ball and burning worms on the grass. Like,
yeah,
dude,
and it
was
wasn't
not
there.
shocking, bro.
Yeah, and like I remember, like it was the guy. I remember Hronis Grasu. There was a hope that
Yeah,
maybe he would be able to do something there.
yeah.
And, he never really got anything going. It's been since Olin, there really hasn't been any consistency. And, you try to think of it. You had Kyle Long who was there and you thought you'd have something with that because of what happened in 15. He had to go to tackle and then he suffered, unfortunately. I think the injury he got in 16 with the ankle, I think always kind of set him back a little bit. And I don't, fair or unfair, I don't know if he was really the same player when, by the end of 19, when, he was, Grasu was the guy where they tried to do that. They've looked at other things. I know there was talk to maybe drafting a center even this year. And I don't think there's anything, really wrong with trying to fix that position. So I don't know.
There's been a lot of misses. I mean, you talk about Gabe Carimi, Chris Williams. I mean, the Bears at drafting offensive line has not been good. Not been good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that, and I just don't. That's why for me, it's like if you can get, because that question came up, and you mentioned Alt being there. If Alt's there, I don't know. Maybe the Bears don't pass him up because at that point you've got to think, all right, we're in your mind. If he falls, and I didn't think he would. Who's the better player at that point? Is it Rome or Alt? I just don't really know. Offensive line, all the former offensive line that ended up on the Raiders. I'd have to think about that one. My mind, but yeah, I don't know what. It is an interesting point where you've got to get something consistent, something to work, or else it's just again. And that's I think the best thing right now when I look at the Bears. I'm like, okay, Williams can be there for a while. Swift can be a running back for a while.
Yes.
Hey,
yes.
DJ's already proven he can be there for a while. Keenan's a little bit more of a wild card veteran, shorter deal. He may, I know if commenter said here, maybe he goes to the Niners, his family's out there, but I'm not thinking he's leaving if the Bears make the playoffs this year.
Well, and the Niners don't have any money.
Yeah, that's the problem. And you've got odunze out there, and that's going to be your issue. Where do you do that? And maybe there are at least a few pieces that at least you can establish something. But maybe you get lucky. Maybe somebody works out, maybe you get it right there and there's just some consistency because there hasn't been there for a very, very long time. Like it's that thing.
And here's something that's been consistently inconsistent is quarterback. But we finally have somebody in the building that has so much personality that almost is able to wear the punky QB freaking head sweatband. So let's take a quick little video of him and in the locker room. This is a really cool 11-second video. You guys are going to enjoy this. This is because we just went through really depressing black divorce cake or something. It was bad. So here's something that'll brighten your guys' mood now.
Loose ass shirt on.
It's not Skims this time though.
Abraham Lincoln chair having
So I mean, this guy, anytime the camera's on him, man, he's just ready, dude. He's just so much personality. He could talk to people. He's always in a good mood and stuff. And I'm really grateful and happy that we have him in the building. So, and like Larry, you just said, hopefully he'll be good for a while and we can continue to build this line around him. I was looking at a video today, Patch, and you were talking about having another good vet quarterback or something earlier. I was looking at today when Patrick Mahomes was walking out. Did you guys see that? Where he was walking out and he was with
Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz slipped and almost fell. And he goes, did you guys see that? Did you guys see that? Make that post that, clip that, and just another good personality out there, So hopefully that's what we got in the building, boys, Is there anything else you guys want to touch on? I think that pretty much wraps it up for the Bears. I would like to move on if you guys have any closing comments and move on to other sports in Chicago really quick before we close out the show.
Well, if you don't, can I just ask Larry one more question about the Bears?
Sure.
Just real quick, Larry. We talk about Caleb Williams, we talk about Rome Odunze, we talk about this offensive line, where the Bears have how far they've come in the last few years. What is your just real quick overall evaluation of Ryan Poles himself?
Well, he's done everything I think he needs to do to establish himself. I've always said the one thing, and I'll even give this to Ryan Pace. Ryan Pace was bold. Pace was bold with all of his moves. Pace was bold when he drafted Trubisky. Pace was bold when he traded and, he made the trade even going back 2016 with Leonard Floyd. I appreciated the fact he was bold. The problem was he missed. He missed on Trubisky, and I think that staircase, everything going down from there. You have to overspend. He goes over for Foles. That doesn't work out. Then you got to go for Dalton. Then you got to trade your way to get around it. I like the fact that Ryan Pace was bold. It didn't work out, but the defense he built probably that was a Super Bowl championship defense. I'm not being any kind of Chicago Gomer. That was a Super Bowl championship defense. The Bears had, I think, in 2018. And I think in 2019, they even still had elements of that. Part of me always wished they would have kept Adrian Amos because I thought that they had a nice little thing there. But, you've got
me too.
Do that. I like what Poles has done. I like the 2022 teardown. I think you have to do that. You're going to have a year like that. You're going to have a year where things do not go well. I thought that he showed patience with that year, let the salary cap float, get that high pick. And I thought, again, every great GM makes that move that changes things. You talk about I think for me, I always think about the Bulls. I think of the Jerry Krause making that trade to get Pippen and Grant. The entire Bulls thing changes. Yes, Jordan did that. That wasn't even Krause. That was Rod Thorne. When you make those moves, you make that trade, it changes the trajectory of your entire team. And that trade changed the trajectory of that entire team. I like what Poles has done with the fact that, again, he has been aggressive and calculated in his moves. I like how he handled the Justin Fields thing. I like the fact that he gave him a good situation. I like the fact that he was decisive and took Caleb. And I like the fact that he was aggressive at the deadlines. Yes, he missed on Claypool. Claypool, for whatever reason, it's gone. I hope he finds it because it's sad to see that happen to a player. I mentioned baseball. We've seen that with Tim Anderson. He was an all-star 2 years ago, and now he's out of the game. That did not work. That was a tough one, especially considering that the Steelers got Porter, and now he's a very important part of what they're doing now with their team. But I like the moves that Poles has made, and I want to bring a couple things in the draft. I know I'm going a little long-winded here, but two things really stand out to me about the draft. Number one in this would be the draft in 2022. I'm going to rack my brain. Yes, 2022. Remember when he went ahead and took Brisker and he went ahead and took the two defenders early? He took Gordon and Brisker. People wanted a wide receiver. People really wanted that offensive weapon.
Yep.
He didn't. He got two starters on his defense. That was something that everybody was saying, receiver, receiver, receiver. No, he filled holes on a defense that needed a whole hell of a lot of help and as a defensive head coach. I thought I'm like, you know what? That's a solid move. And you know what they become? Two solid starters, especially Brisker, who I really think he has a chance to be, one of the top players at his position in the National Football League. And I think also, even in 2023 with Wright taking that tackle at 10th and taking a guy who had known experience against very solid football players. I thought, again, he's taking these players you need to fill holes, not just because you got to have them there. And I like what he's done this offseason. I like the fact that he's built with defense, the defensive coach, and you can even go back 2 years to the signing of Edmonds and signing of Edwards, and who I thought Edwards was a tremendous football player last year. I was surprised he didn't make the Pro Bowl. I thought he was tremendous last year. So, and I like, again, being bold with his moves, not overthinking the NFL draft. Again, selecting the top two guys he could with his two selections were pretty good. I personally like the Kieran, I think, is a good selection. I think for having him for the offensive line. I like the Booker one. Again, I talk about my appeal to having that defensive end who might get overlooked and maybe that guy that sneaks in there and gives you that stuff. I really like what Poles has done Does this mean he's going to have success? Does this mean he's going to go to the Super Bowl? No. No one really truly ever knows that because a lot of people were high on Pace after the 2018 season. Trubisky didn't develop. Nagy could not get the offense going. I think that in some ways, I know Scottish Bear, like he says right there, Pace was reckless, not bold. In some ways he was. You know what? If you're going to be who you are, you be who you are. In anything you do, you be who you are. I'll give him that. He was who he was. In the end of the day, it didn't pay off. It didn't work. They didn't have it. They didn't get enough to what they did. So I like the fact that Poles has maybe just a bit pulled back on that and being in his own style. He's pulled off that throttle just a little bit. He's not going into the corners at 150 miles an hour, getting right up against the wall. But I like the fact that Poles has stayed on a steady progression and has made moves that make sense, not necessarily taking reaches. Pace did that. He took reaches. And despite the fact that I gave him credit for, hey, at least be decisive, it unfortunately led to his demise and unfortunately led to the Bears to the point where they had to rebuild and would get the number 1 pick. So a long story short, in about 5 minutes, I think Poles has done everything he's needed to do to put himself in a position to succeed. Now begins that next step, the hardest one, which he'll see here now over the next 2 to 4 years.
You brought up the Bulls, and the thing about the Bulls that's interesting to me is I figured we would kind of do, well, it appeared what we were doing was what the Bears did in mortgage our defense in order to get draft picks or, other players and whatnot. Now, it seems like they're going really young, and they picked up a guy in Montez. What do you think about that guy? And do you see him being a good player? Do you think that Montez is actually going to end up being something that we could build around?
He's an exciting young player with a lot to develop. He's a local kid, and I think that he's somebody that, Buzelis is going to be somebody you're going to develop here over time. I think if anything, it's symbolism of what the Bulls are doing. They know they had to go young. They didn't hold on to the fantasy. In 21, they did a nice job to build at least a solid core of what could be a really good team. Caruso, great signing. DeRozan had another spark of his career. DeRozan's going to have an interesting part. I even did a video on it, where he's going to have an interesting little legacy here in Chicago, where he was a really outstanding player who played on a team that really wasn't outstanding, but yet was still outstanding in his own way and appealed to the fan base with the way that he played. I think the Bulls let go of that. I think our tourists let go of that fantasy that the Bulls are going to be able to figure that core out. Without Lonzo Ball there, it wasn't going to happen, and they weren't able to put anything around them. And what you had was a team that had a nice first 50 games of 21-22, and that was it. That was the only chapter they had. They had chapter 1, and there was no other chapter. I always said the Pace Bears had chapter 1 and chapter 2 and had no chapter 3 or chapter 4. Yes, the Bears made the playoffs in 2020, and yes, I forget every now and then. But I think it's certainly, for me, I think Buzelis can be a talented player. I think that there are signs there. There's some fun stuff you saw in the summer league he'll have to develop. But the symbolism for me is the fact that Bulls are going young. They're starting over in a lot of ways, and they're now going to have to do what you probably thought they were going to do, and I think our tourists tried to prevent, which is trying to build a young core. And, again, the Bulls don't like to fire executives, so he's going to have some time. The 2025 draft is fairly loaded, so we'll see where that ends up. But certainly I think he's a talented guy and is symbolizing a younger Bulls era where you're going to see a lot of Kobe White. You're going to see a lot of Ayo Dosunmu. You're going to see, even more probably youth kind of get thrown in there. So I'm excited to see what it'll be.
Do you think the Cubs are buyers or sellers at the trade deadline?
They're probably going to be holders, but I don't think they're not going to be buyers. I really thought any hope to change that mindset had to come with this homestand. They didn't do anything. I was at the game last night and it was 1-0 with a number of opportunities where they could have, late innings been able to bring something across. And then today lose the lead. It actually hurts because if, Neris, I believe, gave up the last run of the game, and he's the guy who might be able to trade. The Cubs will be sellers, or if anything, stay putters. I don't know. They're not going to be buyers. It's not going to be like last year where they, were making some moves, especially picking up Candelario. That's not going to happen this year. Really disappointing because you know what? The Cubs are a big market, and I don't think there can be any excuses for what the Cubs need to do. You went out and spent big money to go get Craig Counsell. You fired David Ross, who had been showing steady progress. I know last year it didn't end well. You were looking to take the next step, and barring a really remarkable turnaround of a lot of players and some really improved health, that's not going to happen. With the Wild, I never say never because the wild card's there, but even in that category, they got to climb a lot of teams. It's disappointing. So they're certainly going to be selling. Part of me wonders more if they'll be stay putting because I just don't know if they're going to make much.
Yeah.
Sell,
You guys got
sell,
any
sell,
questions to ask
sell,
them about the Cubs really quick?
Yeah.
Because
I
we've
hope
been on
that
an hour and 40 minutes, and I'm hitting a brick wall, fellas. So I got to get out of here. But let's just wrap up with some Cubs socks and then maybe some hockey real quick.
Yeah, I'm with. I'd like to see them sell me. I mean, what's the definition of insanity? You're putting the same team on the field every year, and you expect them to get better. I mean, this is just not what the Cubs did. Was they somehow spent the eighth most money in baseball by signing a bunch of average players, and they look like an average team. That's what they are. Jed Hoyer ignored the bullpen again. That came back to bite him in the ass. I don't put much of the blame on Craig Counsell, although Craig Counsell has done some things that are a little out of character for him based off of what he did in Milwaukee last year. But for the, I mean, you can't. There's really just nothing there for the Cubs. I mean, even when they do have guys playing well, it's only a few guys, and they all seem to play well at different times. I mean, it's like when Suzuki's hot, Morel's hitting 100. When Morel's hot, Bellinger's hurt, and it's just like it seems like everything just imploded for the Cubs, and it's time to blow this team up and add more to that farm system down there. I'd like to start to see some of these young guys come up. Let's see what the Owen Casey's can do. Let's see what the Matt Shaws can do. Let's see what the Kevin Alcantara's can do. The Cubs keep talking about how the future is in AAA right now. What do you have to lose at this point, right? I mean, it sucks because Ian Happ has a no trade clause, so you'd have to waive that in order to get him off the team. I think Cody Bellinger is probably the best trade piece, but he's hurt right now. Say Suzuki's inconsistent. I think the Cubs love him, but I don't think he's anything special. We saw the same thing kind of with Kosuke Fukudome when they brought one of these players over from the Japanese league, and he didn't turn out to be the guy they said he was going to be. Right now, the only thing the Cubs really have going for them is their starting pitcher. Starting pitching, and people keep saying, "Oh, it's time to trade Jameson Taillon." I don't believe so. I think Jameson Taillon should stay here for the next few years and be kind of a bridge player for the Cubs if they don't plan on competing for a championship anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up with because I was at the game last night with Taillon and seeing how he's pitching, seeing the progress he's kind of that wasn't exactly a clean start to his club career, but he's really he should have won last night. I mean, that's another one of those that's there. And you're right about the starting staff because really right now if you're trading, Bellinger's the first one I thought about, but you don't really know if Bellinger was hitting. If he was cranking it like he was last year and he was healthy, then at that point you might be able to talk to a contender and see what you can get. I just don't see who the Cubs really at this point could trade other than Taillon. And I'm kind of in that camp of maybe you hold on to him. I know that there's a lot of Cub fans who like to get rid to maximize what you could get for him. Are you going to trade Shota? No, I don't think you do that. I mean, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. You get probably good return for him, but you just signed him. So I don't know if they're going to do that. Like I said, I think you bring up a good point, Kyle, about playing a lot of those younger players because they do talk about having a farm system, and you do kind of need to see it. Alcantara is somebody that's interesting that's come up. He's one of those guys that's been there a little bit. You're wondering what he's going to be. I think he'd be a unique guy to see come up there and let Counsell play him, see maybe what they are able to do by the end of the year. And then, they really need to make some moves. I think you made another good point. I don't know how much you can pin on Counsell when you're not really giving him everything there. I think even with Counsell before the season, my win total in my mind was somewhere max 85 and minimum 80. So they're a little bit below. They're below that now, but I mean, they get to 80, sure. But yeah, you're right. I think those are good points you make about seeing the AAA and who are you going to trade?
I agree. I mean, it's at this point, you're the Cubs. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, they had a lot of injuries." But yes, every team in baseball has injuries. You have to find a way to overcome that. And it sucks because they lost key pieces like Julian Merriweather. But I mean, it just seems like for the last 3 years or 2 years, at least 2.5 years, it's been excuse after excuse after excuse. I think at this point, it's time to try to get rid of as many of these guys as you can. I mean, I would even consider trading Nico Warner and talking about bringing Matt Shaw up next year and putting him at second base, but. I know people don't like to hear that because they fall in love with these players, but it's a business at the end of the day, and it should be successful, especially when you have the 8th highest payroll in baseball. And man, right now, Jed Hoyer he's got some questions to answer because for spending that much money and not being a good team in baseball, looks like he's probably the guy who should be taking the blame at this point.
Yeah, and his job future has been on a few of our our thoughts. I've seen a couple people say thank you. So thank you to them too. I see the comments coming along. The question is, is Hoyer's job in trouble? What if Ricketts decides, hey, enough, if he wants to send a message? Do I think he will? I'm kind of leaning toward no. I would say probably 30%. What if he did? I mean, again, you'll find out at the end of the season, but the Cubs have not been in the regular playoffs now since 2018. If you think about it, I'm not trying to discredit the COVID year. That was a hell of a year for those players to put them through that, and they won the division that year. But you're talking about the Cubs not playing a home game, playoff game in front of fans now for 6 years, barring a remarkable turnaround. So I don't know what Ricketts will think. We'll be curious to see.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for the show. Larry, thanks for chiming in. I got to get up at 4 a.m. So I'm trying to get the hell out of here,
Guys, thank you as always.
Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Larry.
Larry, nice to meet you, man.
No, nice to meet you.
Fair down, guys.